within Jewish theology and within the Jewish beliefs and traditions, the red heifer is something that we anticipate. Just like Jerusalem is something that we anticipated to coming back into the old city walls.
Right.
And the same thing with the Temple Mount. The red heifer, from when you're in kindergarten, you learn about the red heifer. And it's something that you know that it's an act of God. To find that red heifer, to bring one to Israel. And then there's other elements that you need. You need a priest, you need a hyssop branch, you need a cedar tree, and then you also, of course, you need the plot of land, which we could also talk about. You have all those elements. In order for that to happen, there needs to be God's hand in it.
Right.
And when you see that God's hand's in it, you then feel like, okay, this is it. This is what we should be doing. And that's what we pray for, that God should come back to Jerusalem. We should be able to build Jerusalem. And be able to come back to where my house of prayer will be the house for all the nations.
That's right. So you have the land. You have the plot of land.
Yes. So it's been a few years that this plot of land has been purchased, and only during COVID, it actually all the permits and everything was finalized. My partner Tzachi Mamo, he came to one day. We were dealing with other projects, and he said, "Listen, I have this plot of land. What do you think we should do with it?" He said, "I had this maybe the vision, maybe to do like a restaurant or something that some visitors could come and you could see today how Jerusalem looks, and then maybe a screen that switches and you could see how the temple would look." So I asked him, why not? Why do we need to have a screen? Why can't we just build the temple? You don't have to have a screen that says. And then also, I was talking to my brother. He said, "What about the red heifer? That's exactly where the red heifer ceremony is supposed to happen."
Wow.
And then
Wow.
Many more things happened, and then we're like, okay, we need to look. We then contacted the Temple Institute, and my problem I always thought was the priest and the red heifer, of course, and the site. The other two, we have the hyssop, tolachani, which is a type of worm.
You have the priest.
Right, so the priest is always, I always thought was an issue, because you need to have a priest. We know kohanim.
Right.
But the problem is you need a kohen or a priest. Kohen is the Hebrew way of saying it, that is actually pure, that he wasn't born in a hospital. He never came into contact with somebody that passed away. It talks about in the Mishnah, it talks about that they would raise them on stones in Jerusalem in order for them to not come into contact with anybody that passed away. So one of the times I went up to the Temple Mount, I saw Rabbi Ariel, who is the founder of the Temple Institute. I was talking to him, and I asked him, isn't the biggest issue of the red heifer the fact that we don't have a priest? He's like, what are you talking about? We have 6 priests that are ready to go.
Oh, gosh.
They have been from they were born till today. We have priests that are 13, 14, and 17, and even one that's 19, and they even know the rules of everything that needs to be done. That's not the issue. He said the issue is the place and the cow.
Wow.
So he said, the place. I said, we have this place. He's like, what? You have a place, a Mount of Olives? He called up his son, Rav Azariah, who's been working on the red heifer from a halachic perspective, from the Jewish customs and traditions, who's been studying it non-stop. He heard immediately, we met with him on the site. He's like, wow, this is a miracle. So now all we were left with the red heifer. And that's where we said, okay, so let's start we could find one. We started to search around the world. At the end, eventually we came to Texas. I mean, a side note, we always said that the red heifer is not exactly a sacrifice, it's a ceremony.
Right.
Also, there's only been 9, and the 10th, it's completely a ceremony. It doesn't even happen on the Temple Mount. It happens on Mount of Olives.
Right.
So in Hebrew, when we say a ceremony is called a tekes, that sounds to me like Texas,
That's right.
Maybe
I love
that's
it.
part of, they come from Texas. So that was another element.
So can you build, and I know the Temple Institute's very familiar with all this, can the temple be built with the Dome of the Rock on the Temple Mount?
So again, I don't want to get too much into the elements. I mean, one of the, if I would draw out the Temple Mount, you have the Dome of the Rock,
right,
and then you have Al-Aqsa Mosque.
Right.
A lot of people mistake, and they don't understand there's 2 structures up there.
Right.
And you'll see even in the news articles, they're going up to the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Al-Aqsa Mosque, El Katse, is on the edge. Okay, it's on the side of the Temple Mount. And actually, it's facing towards Mecca. That's
right,
the prayer direction. So what's up on the Temple Mount, you have the Al-Aqsa Mosque and you have the Dome of the Rock. The Dome of the Rock is a building that has 8 basically walls, or that's how it's structured. And the Jewish belief is that that's exactly where under it is the dome or the rock that the whole world was created from, the rock that the temple stood. And I think that a lot of the answers I would say is probably we would have to see. We would have to see what would happen.
Right.
There's a lot of things that have to happen. And I think that the red heifer is the key to the redemption. It's the key to opening all this up. And maybe I'll take it totally, guys, off Christianity, take you off Judaism. I'll take you to the Quran in the Islam. One of the longest chapter in the Quran is called Surat al-Baqarah. It's the chapter of the heifer.
Really?
Yeah. And in that chapter, it happens to be the second chapter of the Quran, chapter number 2. In verses 61, 66, depending exactly which Quran you take, but pretty much over there, you'll be able to read the laws of the red heifer. The Quran also states and talks about, Muhammad also brought up and talked about the red heifer. And therefore, I believe that God, in a certain way, it's not, if we don't believe in coincidence, there's for a reason that we have this ceremony or something that maybe could connect all the religions. Something
maybe could unify.
You could unify. And you know what? I'll even bring you the day that they arrived. Now, I'm going to remember everybody the day of they arrived. I'm going to come back to that in 1 second. I just wanted to open up a little bit, one more theology point from a Jewish perspective, and then we'll get back to the day of they arrived. Okay. And I'll bring you back to the Abrahamic Accord. So don't get lost in everything I'm saying now. So the year, 2 years ago, in the Jewish calendar is 5,781. Now, it stands for, in the Hebrew letters, is Tafshin Pei Aleph. Now, if you would take the acronym of those letters, it would then say the year of the red heifer. Now, Rav Azariah from the Temple Institute said this years ago. He said this in 2018. And when the year came, he's like, I guess it didn't work out. But truthfully, we found these red heifers, and they were in the mother's womb at that year.
Wow.
And the following year we found them, and then we're like, okay, we need what's the next acronym of the next year? And it's Tafshin Pei Bet, Teheshnat Parah B'Yisrael, the year of the red heifers in Israel. So that whole year we were working nonstop for months on top of months upon months to try to bring them to Israel. And there was endless. I could give you a scenario where we tried to bring them right before Passover, and they're supposed to come on a flight through Belgium, but it got canceled. Why? Because Israel had a great demand for salmon, and instead they brought a plane from Oslo instead of our plane with the red heifers. So they canceled our plane, and once they canceled it, then Israel already didn't want them to bring them through Belgium. We tried bringing them through London, and bringing them up to driving them to Chicago, and we tried Al Delta, United, you name it. We tried so many different things. At the end, we're like, we didn't give up. We're like, come on, this is super hard. It's so much red tape, and the more red tape that we cut, there was more that came. Eventually, they arrived. When did they arrive? They arrived 12 days before the end of that year. So they did. They came to Israel, the year of the red heifers in Israel. And what was that day? That day was 12 days before the end of the Jewish calendar, but it happened to be a day called the 15th of September. Now, what happened prior to that 2 years, to that 15th of September, was the Abrahamic Accords. That's when it was signed.
Wow.
Now, was that not another sign saying, okay, maybe this is the Abrahamic ceremony that should bring all the nations back together?
That would be wonderful.
Like we agree on so much. Even coming here, we were talking a little bit before the show. We agree on so much.
That's right.
Why have we been for centuries so dedicated on those 5% that we disagree instead of thinking about the 95% that we agree?
That's right.
And instead we could work together hand in hand and see prophecies fulfilling in front of our own eyes.
That's exactly right. But anything else? Now, Bonai Israel is the ministry that you're a part of. Is that right?
Yeah.
And you guys, you need money, right? You need some help and for people to support what you guys are doing with the red heifers. It costs like $250,000 to take those red heifers over there, didn't it? Even
more, but we'll tell you $250,000 just to keep you. But it was a pretty, not the worst, but then once they arrived, we also got from that. They're like, pay up. Yeah. Like, what? Yeah, you got to pay. So basically what we're trying to do now is the red heifers are in Israel. They're next to Beit Shan. And this is new news, breaking news. We just signed now with Shiloh, the ancient Shiloh site, that we're going to be moving the red heifers to build a visitor center in Shiloh, where the tabernacle basically stood for 369 years, right before coming to Jerusalem. So maybe that's also, like a little bit in the back of our minds. So we're going to be building a research center, a visitor center, where we'll be able to grow the red heifers there, but also for future generations. We want to have the red heifer, like a red heifer center. Everybody could learn about purification, could learn about the history, and they could connect to everything. So we're now fundraising for that. We're fundraising $3 million to try to build that center. We believe it's very, very important, and kind of what you were also asking before. We want to educate the world of what's happening, because it's not, going back to the Temple Mount and to the third temple, the temple is not just a Jewish temple.
Right.
The temple is for all nations, and we need all nations to come together.
Right.
We want the real peace. We don't want to just say it, it sounds good. It's the true meaning. And in order to do that, we need to really educate everybody about what's happening. And like shows like this are wonderful. They really talk about the real events that are happening and talk about, the tipping points of things that are occurring in front of our eyes. So that's one of the elements that we're
going to put the website up on our screen right now in boneisrael.com.
And on which no yoke has been laid.
We are stepping into the story to see prophecies fulfilled, and we have partnered with our friends here in Israel and back in the States to bring the red heifer back to the land of Israel.
Rabbis from the Temple Mount Institute approached Stinson about the unique cattle.
They said, Byron, could you look in Texas and find us a red heifer? I wasn't expecting that, and it was shocking to me to think about it, but I know a lot of ranchers, and I know a little bit about cattle, being from Texas.
By the way, our friends in Texas, as you know, have recently found several red heifers, and our church has gotten involved with transporting those cows back to the Holy Land, and so here we are.
This began an in-depth process of finding the rare heifer that meets key stipulations found in the Bible.
The sacrifice, it had to be made in line of sight with the Holy of Holies, and I'm pointing this direction because you can see this golden domed building behind me. That is called the Dome of the Rock, but in Jesus' day, that's where the temple would have stood, where the Holy of Holies was, where the glory of God manifests itself here on earth. It is the most sacred real estate on this planet. And so the sacrifice had to be made within line of sight of that, and it had to be made outside of the camp. So we've secured the land, we found the cows, we're stepping into the story, and we're praying, Maranatha, Lord, come quickly. I would like you to all join me as I welcome my two friends to the stage, Yitzhak Mamo and Hanan Kaputsky. Welcome. These guys are amazing. They flew in, they arrived at 6 a.m. this morning. They don't know what time zone they're in. They don't know what universe they're in. So they are really, they love you guys. That's why they're here. And I do want to say, as we get started, that they've put together this pamphlet here. It's called The Red Heifer, The Key to Redemption. And as a gift to you, they want to give a copy to you before you leave this evening. And so these are available at the back table, and they will be there to greet you after the services. And by the way, I want to encourage you, as you open it, on the very first page, opening remarks, it says, this booklet is dedicated to the blessed memory. I'll let you read the rest. It's a beautiful tribute. It's a beautiful tribute. Okay, well, would you like to give a greeting? Introduce yourselves.
Thank you very much for your time. Thank you to be with us, to be part of the project of the Red Heifer. Thank you.
Awesome. And just by way of introduction, Zaki has worked for 25 years with the Israeli government, helping them to secure land. He's also an honorary consul for Israel to the nation of Papua New Guinea. And he works with Olam Shalem, which helps connect kids to the land of Israel. And so we're honored to have him. And Hanan Kupiatsky is a business startup guy. He's been in the business for 7 years. He's also a trained rabbi. He's a cantor. He's many things. He's a man of many talents, and we're honored to have you as well. So thank you for being here. All right, guys, as we get started, I want to start with this thought. How did we get here? Because this is a journey that goes back several years, and I believe it all began when you secured this land on Mount of Olives. And I would love if you could just tell your story and just share with us how we got to this point.
As it's mentioned, I tried many years to rebuild students' Samaria in East Jerusalem. And part of my work is to buy lands and homes. And God planned, let me buy this land in Mount of Olive, at the front of the Temple Mount. This is the bless that we got.
Now talk about your original vision for that plan. What did you intend to put there, and how did that change with the entrance of this guy over here?
So at the beginning, I didn't know exactly what we're going to do with this land. And then we thought to build a kind of restaurant or maybe visitor center with a big windows that sometime, the window changed the picture, and at the front you can see the Dome of the Rock, and then you can see the Temple Mount. So I said it's very nice, it's very excited. And then I met Hanan, and we started to discuss about it. And Hanan told me, but why we have to do it as a presentation? Let's do the real thing.
So let me see if I got this right. You wanted a nice building with a picture window that you could flip a screen and it would show you what the temple looked like back in ancient times. And Hanan comes along and says, why don't we just build the real thing? I love it. I love that kind of you are a little bit crazy. You're the right kind of crazy, though.
It's not that I'm crazy. It's that you guys are crazy. I'm the normal.